The shadows lengthen, and within them a truth too ancient to ignore, too raw to confront. Have you ever wondered why, for some men, the deepest commitment feels like a cage? Why the whispers of desire always drown out the promises of love? There's a primal undercurrent, a fundamental flaw etched into the very blueprint of the masculine psyche, a relentless pull towards something beyond the tranquil shores of devotion. It is a curse, an inescapable decree, dictating that their true allegiance will always lie with their own untamed desires, not with the hearts they claim to cherish. Welcome, truth-seekers, to psychher, where we strip back the comfortable illusions and expose the uncomfortable realities of the human condition. Today, we peel back the layers of societal pretense and psychological defense to reveal a truth so profound, so unsettling, that it might just shatter your preconceived notions of love and commitment. Stay with us until the very end, for what we are about to uncover are not mere theories, but the chilling echoes of a hidden biological and psychological imperative that shapes the lives of men and those who love them. From the dawn of human existence, etched into the very fabric of masculine biology, lies an undeniable, potent force, the drive for propagation, for novelty, for the expansion of one's genetic legacy. This is not a choice made consciously in the quiet moments of reflection, but a deep, resonant hum within the primitive brain, a persistent whisper that speaks of conquest and dispersion. Think of it as an ancient program, running continuously in the background, influencing decisions, steering desires, and subtly yet powerfully, undermining the very concept of singular, unwavering commitment. You see, for eons, the male imperative was to spread his seed far and wide, to ensure the survival of his lineage by diversifying his genetic portfolio. This wasn't about love, nor about emotional fidelity. It was about raw, unadulterated biological success. The more partners, the greater the statistical probability of offspring reaching maturity, of genes surviving another generation. This isn't a romantic notion, but a stark, brutal truth of evolution, and its echoes reverberate even in our hypermodern, supposedly civilized world. Consider the neurochemical symphony that plays within the male brain, a complex orchestration of hormones and neurotransmitters that often prioritizes the chase over the catch, the pursuit over the possession. Dopamine, the potent pleasure chemical, floods the reward pathways not just in the act of consummation, but often more intensely in the anticipation, in the challenge, in the novelty of a new conquest. The human brain, particularly the male brain in this context, is wired for exploration, for novelty seeking. The thrill of the unknown, the tantalizing prospect of what could be, often outshines the comforting familiarity of what is. This isn't a moral failing. It is a neurological bias, a system designed to keep men moving, seeking, pushing boundaries. When a relationship settles into a comfortable, predictable rhythm, the initial dopamine rush inevitably wanes. For some men, this isn't merely a natural evolution of intimacy, but a signal, a siren song from the subconscious, whispering that something new, something more stimulating, lies just beyond the horizon. The established relationship, for all its profound depth and genuine affection, can begin to feel less like a haven and more like a constraint, a boundary limiting the endless possibilities that their evolutionary and neurochemical wiring still yearns for. It's not that men don't value stability or companionship, but rather that the deeply embedded impulse for exploration, for the next experience, for the affirmation of their own potency through new connection, often pulls them with a force that is difficult, if not impossible, to consistently resist. This isn't a flaw in you or the love you offer. It's a deeply ingrained mechanism within them, constantly evaluating the landscape for new opportunities, new sources of that exhilarating dopamine-fueled high. The commitment, then, often becomes a secondary consideration, a comfortable backdrop against which the internal drama of their desires plays out. Societal conditioning, layered upon this biological bedrock, further solidifies this curse. From boyhood, men are often taught subtly and overtly that their worth is tied to their achievements, their independence, their strength and their freedom. Vulnerability, deep emotional dependence, and the perceived loss of self in a committed partnership are frequently depicted as weaknesses, as antithetical to true masculinity. The hero's journey, a dominant narrative in countless cultures, is often one of individual triumph, of overcoming obstacles alone, not of finding ultimate fulfillment in shared domesticity. This creates a psychological chasm between the ideal of the self-sufficient man and the demands of true romantic commitment, which requires interdependence, emotional transparency, and a willingness to merge identities to some degree. For many men, the idea of sacrificing personal ambition, of compromising their individual desires for the sake of a shared future, can feel like a direct assault on their very identity. The fear of being tied down, of losing their autonomy, their freedom to pursue their own path, their own desires, becomes a formidable barrier to full emotional immersion in a relationship. They are conditioned to believe that their personal success, their individual conquests are paramount, and anything that threatens this, even genuine love, is viewed with suspicion, as a potential emasculating force. This isn't a conscious choice to hurt. It's a deeply ingrained program that prioritizes self-preservation and self-actualization above all else, often at the expense of genuine, reciprocal commitment. The external validation, the pursuit of their own glory, their own desires, often feels more tangible, more real, more inherently masculine than the often unquantifiable emotional rewards of true committed love. This internal conflict between the societal ideal of the independent male and the relational demands of partnership creates an ongoing tension that often resolves in favour of the former, leaving a trail of unfulfilled promises and broken hearts in its wake. They are told to be strong, to be independent, to conquer, and for many, deep, unwavering commitment feels like a surrender of these very principles. Consider the male ego, a fragile yet fiercely defended construct, often inextricably linked to a sense of power, control, and perceived options. In the modern dating landscape, where choice abounds and the illusion of endless possibilities is perpetuated by digital platforms, the male ego can become an insatiable beast. The grass is greener syndrome for men is not just a passing thought. It can be a deeply held belief, fueled by an underlying fear of missing out, of making the wrong choice, of settling for less than optimal. The act of truly committing, then, becomes a monumental decision, one that necessitates shutting off the myriad other perceived options, a psychological narrowing of a seemingly infinite field. For an ego that thrives on expansion, on potential, on the idea of ultimate freedom, this narrowing can feel like a profound loss. It's a decision to willingly close doors, to abandon other paths, to relinquish control over their future romantic landscape. This isn't just about sexual fidelity, it's about the deeper emotional and psychological commitment that defines a truly shared life. The constant internal weighing of what-if scenarios, the persistent awareness that other potential partners exist, often prevents men from fully investing their emotional capital in one person. They may go through the motions of commitment, even express love, but there remains a guarded part of their psyche, a strategic reserve, perpetually aware of alternatives. This isn't necessarily malicious. It's a defense mechanism, a way for the ego to maintain its perceived power and options, even at the cost of genuine intimacy. The fear of being trapped, of losing their personal narrative, their unique journey, often overshadows the profound security and depth that true commitment offers. They may desire companionship, but they simultaneously resist the chains they imagine it imposes. It's a constant battle between the allure of the known and the siren call of the unknown. And for many men, the call of the unknown, of the unfulfilled potential, holds a magnetic pull that is simply too strong to consistently ignore. Their identity, their very sense of self-worth, can become intertwined with this perceived freedom, making the leap into profound, singular commitment an act of profound psychological courage that many are simply unwilling or unable to make. Delving deeper into the psychological landscape, we confront the paradox of intimacy. For many men, the very closeness that women crave can trigger a profound, almost instinctual need for retreat. This isn't a rejection of love, but often a subconscious fear of engulfment, a primal apprehension of losing their identity, their autonomy, within the relationship. Imagine standing too close to a roaring fire. The warmth is inviting, but the intensity can feel overwhelming, even threatening. Deep emotional intimacy, the kind that demands vulnerability and a merging of lives, can feel similarly suffocating for a psyche trained to value independence above all else. Men are often socialized to be problem solvers, to be stoic, to keep their emotional cards close to their chest. The relentless expectation of emotional transparency, of revealing their deepest fears and insecurities, can feel like a stripping away of their defenses, leaving them exposed and vulnerable in a way they are simply not equipped to handle or have been taught to fear. This isn't a conscious decision to withhold love. It's a deeply ingrained defense mechanism, a protective barrier erected against perceived emotional danger. The push-pull dynamic, so often observed in relationships, where a man appears to draw close only to pull away when intimacy reaches a certain threshold, is a manifestation of this internal struggle. They crave connection on one level, but on another, they recoil from the intensity, from the perceived threat to their carefully constructed self-image. The need for space, for solitude, for uninterrupted focus on their own pursuits can become a desperate, driving urge when the emotional demands of a relationship begin to feel too heavy, too consuming. This isn't a sign that they don't care. It's a deeply wired response to protect what they perceive as their essential self, their core identity, from being dissolved or subsumed by another's needs. The boundary between self and other, so fluid and permeable for some, is rigidly maintained by many men as a fundamental requirement for their psychological survival. To truly commit, to truly merge, requires dismantling these walls, and for many the psychological cost feels too high. They may want the benefits of partnership, companionship, support, intimacy, but often without the full, unyielding emotional surrender that true commitment demands. This inherent conflict creates a perpetual state of emotional guardedness, making complete and unwavering devotion an elusive dream. Furthermore, the scars of past experiences, particularly formative ones, can deeply influence a man's capacity for commitment, morphing into insidious defense mechanisms that sabotage even the most promising relationships. While we eschew fictional narratives, the patterns of attachment developed in childhood, the blueprints for how we relate to others, cast long shadows. A man who experienced inconsistent parental care, who learned early that emotional needs might go unmet, or that love was conditional, might develop an avoidant attachment style. This isn't a conscious choice, but a deeply embedded coping mechanism. Such a man might crave intimacy, but simultaneously fear it, pushing away closeness as a preemptive strike against potential abandonment or disappointment. For him, commitment doesn't represent security. It represents a trap, a potential source of deep pain. He might subconsciously equate vulnerability with weakness, and deep emotional investment with a loss of self. The protective walls he built around his heart, once necessary for survival, become insurmountable barriers to genuine, lasting intimacy. He might enter relationships, even profess love, but maintain an emotional distance, a strategic aloofness that prevents him from truly merging his life with another's. His actions might scream, "I'm available," while his subconscious mind is yelling, "Danger, retreat." This isn't a deliberate act of cruelty. It's a deeply rooted psychological defense, a primal scream from a wounded inner child that refuses to risk the pain of abandonment again. The superficial gestures of commitment might be there, but the profound, unwavering emotional presence required for true devotion remains elusive, locked behind walls of fear and self-preservation. He may ghost, pull away, or subtly sabotage the relationship whenever it approaches a depth that feels threatening to his fragile inner world. The curse here manifests as an inability to fully trust, to fully surrender to the loving embrace of another, perpetually holding back a crucial part of himself, forever reserving an escape route, just in case. This brings us to the most uncomfortable, most profound truth of all. For men, the struggle between desire and devotion is not merely a transient conflict, but an inherent, often unconscious, battle against a deeply embedded psychological and biological programming. It is the core of the male curse. It is the relentless internal tug-of-war between the primal urge to constantly seek, to conquer, to expand, and the profound yet often less stimulating demands of sustained, singular devotion. You see, the very definition of love can diverge significantly. For many women, love is synonymous with profound emotional connection, shared vulnerability, security, and unwavering commitment. For many men, however, while these elements are valued, love often coexists, or is even overshadowed, by a persistent drive for novelty, for personal achievement, for individual freedom, and for the validation that comes from pursuing their own specific desires. The distinction isn't always clear-cut, and it's rarely a conscious, malicious intent. It's a fundamental difference in how primary drives are prioritized. Imagine a dual operating system running simultaneously. One system is designed for connection, for building, for nurturing the shared nest. The other, older, more primitive system is designed for hunting, for exploration, for constantly scanning the horizon for new challenges, new rewards, new opportunities for self-affirmation. When the demands of the connection system begin to feel overwhelming, or when the exploration system finds a particularly enticing new signal, the latter often takes precedence, sometimes without conscious deliberation. This is why men can genuinely express love, even feel profound affection, and yet still find themselves drawn away by the allure of personal ambition, the thrill of a new pursuit, or the simple yet powerful call of their own untamed desires. It's not that they don't want love. It's that their deeply ingrained wiring compels them to prioritize their own internal compass, their own sense of purpose, their own definition of freedom, above the demands of emotional interdependence. This inherent conflict is the curse, the inability to fully, completely, and without reservation surrender their individual desires to the collective tapestry of a shared, committed life. It is a fundamental tension that defines their journey, often leaving them, and those who love them, in a perpetual state of longing for a complete, unwavering devotion that may simply be beyond their biological and psychological grasp. This is the tragic reality, the silent internal battle, that shapes their choices, and ultimately, their capacity for what we traditionally understand as true commitment. The ultimate, chilling revelation, then, is this: the male curse is not merely a convenient excuse, nor a fleeting weakness, but an ancient, indelible inscription etched into the very core of masculine existence. It reveals that the idea of a man completely, utterly, and unequivocally surrendering his personal desires, his inherent drive for exploration, his profound need for individual autonomy, to the singular devotion of a lifelong partnership, is often a romantic fallacy. It is a beautiful ideal, yes, but one that battles against a biological and psychological programming that, for millennia, has prioritized diversification, expansion, and the relentless pursuit of self. The truth is, many men are not choosing to withhold. They are struggling against a current that flows deep within their very being, a current that constantly pulls them back towards the uncharted waters of their own desires, their own ambitions, their own perceived freedom. This curse isn't about malicious intent. It's about an inherent, often unconscious conflict between the societal ideals of romantic love and the primal evolutionary imperative that still resonates within the male psyche. You are not witnessing a deliberate act of betrayal, but rather the unfolding of a predetermined narrative, a deeply embedded programming that dictates their true allegiance will always, ultimately be to themselves and their own untamed desires. The commitment they offer, the love they express, often comes with an invisible asterisk, a silent clause that reserves a fundamental part of their being for their individual journey, their unfulfilled quests, their unceasing internal pursuit of something more. This isn't a judgment. It's an unveiling of a harsh reality, a hidden truth that explains why, for so many, the deep, unwavering commitment to love often feels like an unattainable summit. If this revelation resonated with you, if it exposed uncomfortable truths you've sensed but never articulated, then engage with us. Like this video. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you witnessed this curse in action, or perhaps felt its pull yourself? And most importantly, subscribe to psychher for more unflinching explorations into the shadowed corners of the human mind. Until next time, remember, you're watching psychher, where we dare to uncover what lies beneath.